Welcome to Leaders Learning from Leaders. I'm pleased to introduce our guest today, Dr. Brian Graham, the Superintendent of Grand Island Central School District in New York. His educational career includes being a special education teacher, elementary and middle school principal, and assistant superintendent for Pupil Services. Dr. Graham is currently the president of the Erie Niagara School Superintendent Association. Welcome, Brian.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm so excited to be here in downtown Buffalo in this great studio and excited to talk about leadership.
Appreciate it. So how about for starters, tell us a little bit about your school district and your tenure there so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Grand Island, New York is literally an island located on the Niagara River, about 15 minutes north of downtown Buffalo and about 15 minutes south of Niagara Falls. So really beautiful, picturesque island, a great place to live, a great place to work. We have about 2,800 students. We have 3 elementary schools, 1 middle school, and 1 high school. And we are known to be proud Vikings on Grand Island.
And how long have you been superintendent?
Yeah. So this is my 9th year, and I started teaching in 1986 at Heritage Centers, where I worked as a special ed teacher for 7 years. Then I worked 2 years at Erie One Boces as a special ed teacher, and then 7 years at Alden Central Schools. So 16 years as a special education teacher, 13 years as a principal, and like you said, assistant superintendent now in my 9th year. If you add it all up, I should be retired.
So I always like to look at the background of how people got to the superintendency, and so I'm wondering, in your case, how do you think being involved in special education and being a special education teacher, how do you think that impacts your work as a superintendent?
Yeah, I actually love that question because I've thought a lot about that journey that I've had, and I really look at leadership through the lens of special education. I believe that in my career, I've had the opportunity to work with some really challenging children with severe physical, developmental, sometimes maladaptive needs. And the one thing that I always take away from those experiences is that group of children that I was so blessed to work with always grew. There was learning that occurred every day. There was growth that occurred every day. So through the lens of special education, I view all education through that. If every child can grow and learn every day, then it's true for every child, regardless of ability or disability. And with that said, I would say that the influence of a growth mindset is so important for me as a professional, as a father, as a husband, as a brother, right? As a neighbor, as an educator. If I am constantly committed to growing and learning every day, then that's a good role model for the rest of the organization. So I really do believe wholeheartedly in looking at educational leadership through the lens of special education.
There's a phrase I know I've heard some educators use that every child deserves an IEP.
Yeah, right. I love it. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, just that's rang in my ear as you said that.
For sure. I mean, personalized learning is exactly where we need to be in public schools. And actually, artificial intelligence will help us get there. So to your point of, that leadership style, special education and individualized plans is truly what allows children with the most significant needs to grow incrementally every day. And if that's true, then why isn't that true for the child who's taking advanced placement physics, right? That every child should have that opportunity to be on a pathway of their own personalized success in academics. So I really do look at it that way.
With a personalized goal.
Yeah.
Which is...
Yeah, for sure. And not only for students, but for the teachers, for the superintendent, for the bus drivers, for the teacher aides, every person who is committed to continuous growth and learning, I think puts a district on a championship pathway.
So Brian, I know that you spend time as an adjunct staff member with the university and teacher ed. I know that you do PD for teachers and administrators. I'm wondering if you'd talk a little bit about what are you seeing as some of the most important areas for educators to be growing and expanding their skills and knowledge.
Yeah, I love that question. It begins with relationships and positive relationships, right? Having a high emotional, intelligent quotient, I think, is really important as a foundation for our current educators and future educators. I think that in many cases, in some subjects, we are no longer necessarily the masters of the content. I mean, we are. Many educators, get their master's degree and beyond in a particular content area. But I think now with the world of technology, content is at everybody's fingertips, regardless if you're just using, a simple Google search or a YouTube to help reinforce our learning. But artificial intelligence is even exponentially taking content and making it available to anybody who wants it. So I think that's really an important perspective, that sometimes children coming to our classrooms already have rich, deep backgrounds in a particular content. And as educators, we need to understand that, maybe pre-assess to make sure that we can then personalize learning in the classroom. And with that said, then our teachers, besides having a very strong emotional intelligent quotient, need to be experts in personalized learning, experts in differentiating instruction, and then putting children on that pathway. Otherwise, the competition for the pupils will grow in other areas, whether it's private schools, charter schools. The ability for technology to provide the content is already there. So as educators, we need to embrace that and then provide the content in a way that's personalized and exciting and engaging and empowering for kids.
So you've been superintendent pre-COVID and post-COVID.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, do you see a difference or an influence on teacher education and administrator education that either was forced by COVID or that we learned from COVID?
Yeah, another great question. Clearly, many school districts were already on a pathway of making sure that kids had their own mobile device prior to COVID. And to the state's credit, the Smart Schools Bond Act allowed for districts to use those grant funds from the state to begin building that infrastructure so that we could be moving in a great direction to integrate technology in the classrooms, but also give kids tools to decrease the digital divide, right? If you come from a family that's economically disadvantaged and they can't, buy a Chromebook for you, how wonderful it is that schools were providing that through the Smart Schools Bond Act well before COVID. So that actually set us up really well, to the extent possible, to make sure that every child had access to learning during COVID. COVID was horrible, right? It was a difficult, very challenging way to educate across the world. And yet our teachers embraced the technology and had to turn a learning curve quite quickly to adapt themselves to be able to provide lessons through Google Classroom and technologies that they had never really utilized before. So all of that said, I would say now we really are set up very nicely post-COVID to continue using technology, particularly artificial intelligence, in the classroom directly with kids. One of the things that we're really proud of in Grand Island is I think we're the 4th district in New York State to offer an artificial intelligent tutor to every child from grade 6 through 12 in our school system. And that artificial intelligent tutor is called Migo. It's built into or baked into Khan Academy. And Sal Khan, of course, is one of the world leaders in a not-for-profit company that has a mission of providing highly effective content for the world for free. He has partnered with OpenAI and Sam Altman to create an AI tutor. So now a child in 6th grade, a child in 12th grade in our school system, a child taking AP physics, a child just trying to understand how to multiply fractions has an AI tutor 24 hours a day, 7 days a week that they can type a question to and not get the answer, but get information through Socratic coaching so that children now have a tutor at their disposal. And could you imagine you and I back in the day having a resource like that, and maybe what opportunities it would open up in our world? I'm super excited about that. And we couldn't have done that without COVID, and we couldn't have done that without the Smart Schools Bond Act and making sure every child has a Chromebook. So really interesting scenarios. So to your, I don't know if I answered directly your question, but that is quickly how the world has evolved. And I think educators need to be comfortable sometimes in the uncomfortable, just like we were preparing when COVID hit. A lot of teachers were uncomfortable figuring out how to use Google Classroom to effectuate learning. Now it's becoming comfortable with AI tools.
I'm just smiling because I had a breakfast with my 13-year-old grandson.
Okay.
And he and I went out to breakfast the other morning before I headed up here to Buffalo, and he was telling me that he had a big science test, and the teacher gave him just pages and pages of material that they should review in order for the test. So he's explaining to me how he fed the teachers, all the teachers' review stuff into Chat GPT.
Oh my gosh.
And asked it for a study guide.
Yes.
He pulled his study guide out.
Yeah.
Then he asked it to make him up a test.
Yes.
And then he asked it to create the answers for the test so that he could check himself as to what he knew and what he had to study further. And
it's so true. There are tools. There's a Google tool called Notebook LM that I just learned about at the end of December. And I learned about it through a conversation with Dr. Venu Govindaharju at the University of Buffalo, who is the artificial intelligence expert at UB and has been doing work in AI since the late 80s and early 1990s. And at the end, I did a podcast with him. At the end, I said, Venu, what are you using? He said, ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity. And he said, Notebook LM. And it's exactly what was it your nephew?
My grandson.
Your grandson did. Notebook LM, you can put multiple sources in Notebook LM, click one button called Study Guide. It'll create 10 quiz questions for you and show you what the 10 answers are. It'll give you a glossary of terms. There's another button that'll provide a frequently asked question document about the sources. And then, listen to this, there's an audio overview button. You click it, it takes about 3 minutes, and it develops a podcast.
Oh, wow.
An AI male voice and an AI female voice talking about the sources that are embedded in what sources you have put in. And so now think about a child with a learning disability or a reading disability can now listen and use their comprehension skills based on rich, important sources and learn and garner information and not have to struggle because of dyslexia, right? Like these tools are transformative, and how exciting that your grandson was already using it. I think it's great.
So I know that you've got a really strong interest in innovation and as well as in AI now. And let's talk to the superintendent.
Mm-hmm.
What are the questions that a superintendent should be asking him or herself related to AI, and what are the kinds of questions they should be asking their leadership teams about AI and how we work with it? Right.
So, earlier you were talking about some of the challenges that COVID has presented in public education or in education across the world, or particularly in the United States. And one of those challenges, I think, is the making sure that teachers, making sure that administrators have a high quality balance of work and home life. And as you know, superintendents and administrators work many, many hours a day. Superintendents are on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we're responsible for processing a lot of information, right? Recently, in New York State, the Rockefeller Institute did a 300-page report on foundation aid, right? And many of my colleagues sat and probably read all 300 pages. But to your grandson's point, right, there are tools that can help us process information that will inform us and be helpful to us as we navigate all of the responsibilities and duties of the job. And in my thinking, lends us to having a better quality of life, right? Because now we can process 300 pages in a shorter amount of time and allow us maybe to go home and have dinner with our family, right? So I think superintendents should be thinking about how can AI be an assistant, a strategic thought partner to the work of the CEO of a large organization. There's a book called The AI Leader by Jeff Woods, and that is Jeff's premise that CEOs and, of course, superintendents and or principals and or teachers, right, can use tools like this to provide a better quality of work life so that we can focus particularly on what's the most important aspects of our job is educating children. So that is the message that I would want to communicate to superintendents is to start thinking along those lines. And then I'm very blessed that I can demonstrate and show how the various tools that I've become proficient with all can offer different aspects of that better quality of life for that superintendency. And just shortly, obviously everybody knows about ChatGPT. It's just getting better every day. Perplexity AI is so good because it gives you the citations and the sources of where it's drawing its information so that you can make sure it's not hallucinating. Mm-hmm. Gemini is becoming strong. It's a Google AI tool. Claude is super exciting. Claude can allow a superintendent or a assistant superintendent curriculum or a principal or a teacher to take, say, the New York State Regents exam. And I demonstrate this. I take the January 2025 New York State Algebra exam as the PDF from the state website, and I drop it into Claude. And then I can take the June 2024 Algebra Regents exam and do the same thing and drop it into Claude. And the key skill set that people need to have is how to engineer a prompt so that the AI tool gives back a high quality output. And what I demonstrate is that my prompt first asks Claude to examine all of the academic vocabulary terms used in the questions and answers, the selected responses, and then to rank order by frequency count the most frequent to least frequent used terms. So when I demonstrate that and people see that in seconds I have a table with academic terms and the number of times those terms were used in 2 exams, it's so enriching for, say, the curriculum director, for the principal and or the brand new algebra teacher to already know in advance, here are the academic terms that my children need to be successful in June. That way they can start creating games, educational games, word walls. How about a secondary algebra classroom looking like an elementary classroom with a word wall, right? But that's not all. So then I demonstrate and I prompt Claude to look at those 2 exams and create a curriculum map that's based on 170 days of instruction that has essential questions, specific content and skills aligned to the New York State standards, calendar-based from September to June, to make sure that it identifies resources, academic terms, opportunities for differentiation, and of course, assessments and perhaps authentic performances.
Wow.
Too. When I say people literally gasp when they see the output, they do. And so the output is, I mean, people are trained all over the world in curriculum mapping, and it takes multiple days, multiple hours of professional learning communities coming together and doing that work. So when that work can be done in minutes, but then reviewed by humans, by human experts to tweak, modify, or adjust, the amount of time that it saves and provides a professional quality of life is astounding. But that's not all. I'm talking about Claude because Claude writes code. So now, after I demonstrate that it can create a text-based curriculum app, I ask it to create a web-based curriculum app. And immediately it writes the code behind the scenes to a website. And then it demonstrates a preview of what the web-based curriculum app looks like, right? So you can see if you like it. It's you can click buttons and toggle between September and June. You can manipulate it just like a real enriching website, and then publish it onto your district's webpage, maybe with a password or no password. But first, of course, you would want the human experts to modify it. So the way I see this innovation and technology, the emerging trends, I think, is that it's the quality of life that it provides while not spending maybe 100% of your professional development time building that curriculum app, but maybe you're spending 10 to 15% of your time ensuring that it's high quality. And that allows us to focus on kids.
Powerful.
It really is something. Yeah.
So knowing that some of our listeners are new to the superintendency, and some of our listeners may be those that are trying to decide whether I'm going to go the superintendency route or not.
That's right.
What words of encouragement might you be putting out to leaders who are at that point of decision making in their career?
Yeah, honestly, it's such a great question, and it's different. The path is different, right, for everybody. I think I know some people that knew they wanted to be a superintendent when they got into teaching, which that was not me, but I know a few of my colleagues had that in their mind's eye, and I think that's fantastic. For me, that wasn't the case. I was a teacher for 16 years before I looked at administration. And I had a mentor who kept nudging me and said, you need to go into administration. I'm like, no, I love teaching. I was coaching. I was so engaged in the work that I was doing, but I kept getting nudged. So eventually here I am. And so I guess the advice first is that I would always encourage somebody to pursue that path, particularly if they're interested in it. And they must see that they themselves have become some powerful influence in some aspect of their career, whether it was teaching, whether it was being a principal or assistant or director of curriculum. Something is exciting them. And I would always want to just touch base on what's that story, tell me your story and getting to know that aspect of it. Beyond that, I think it's important to talk to a superintendent. I went and talked to John McSwan, the superintendent of Cleve Hill. He and I were principals in West Seneca. He became superintendent. I continued my work in West Seneca, and eventually I had lunch with him. And I said, John, I'm kind of thinking about this and maybe applying. He's like, absolutely, go for it. And he was so encouraging. So sometimes it's great to have that in your life, somebody you trust, somebody who, and is encouraging that way. And then I think we're blessed in New York State to have a lot of different superintendent academies that have grown. There's a brand new one. In fact, John McSwan and Michael Cornell. Michael Cornell is the superintendent, retired superintendent of Hamburg, and he was formerly the president of the Erie Niagara School Superintendent Association. Now he's our executive director. Michael Cornell and John McSwan are creating a brand new superintendent academy right here at Buffalo State University, and that's going to go live in the fall. So locally, there's going to be a local hub here, which will be accessible, right, from all the educators that are interested in that in this region. And then there are other regions through the New York State Council of School Superintendents and LEAF that are available. I know of two, Jason Andrews, who you have interviewed in the past. fantastic, leads a wonderful one. And you've interviewed Kevin McGowan, another superstar superintendent in our state who assists with a different superintendent academy. So, and those, by the way, all three of those are aidable through our BOCES, which makes it more affordable for a school district to sponsor an up-and-coming leader to pursue this career. So I think talking to a superintendent, attending one of those academies is critical. And then I think just being open and reflective of your journey and what your journey can become. Always be open, of course. And I think this has been a theme in all the podcasts you have done. Just the people that you've interviewed are reflective, and they set goals for themselves, and they are collaborative, right? They know they're not the smartest person in the room, and they appreciate the wisdom and experience of others. So those are all the kinds of conversations I would have if somebody was interested in that superintendency.
Well, Brian, it's been great talking to you, but before we close out, I want to make sure I know that you've got a podcast going now.
Yes, yeah.
And as soon as I saw that joy was one of the words in the title of the podcast, I wanted to hear about that.
I love it. So I'm the host of two podcasts. So the first is called Achieving Joy and Mastery in Public Schools. And the word joy comes from Michael Cornell. If you get him on the schedule, Michael believes wholeheartedly in joy, value, and connection. And that's the foundation of his leadership philosophy and style, and always has been. And I knew that, and I love that word and the concept of joy. And if our children can experience joy in schools, then other things will follow. They'll feel connected, they'll feel valued, and maybe intrinsically motivated to continue, to be continuous learners, right? So 3 years ago, Mike and I went out to lunch, and I think quite honestly, and you're well aware of this, there's sometimes a negative narrative in the United States about public education. Yeah. And Michael and I were talking pretty deeply about it, and we were both affected by it because of COVID and the way people reacted to public education at the time. And of course, hey, we could have done a better job for sure, right? We have to reflect on what we could have done better. But boy, when you look at the joy that occurs in schools every day, I thought, how cool would it be to have a podcast that's longer than a Twitter post, right? And that tells a story, and it's driven by the superintendent. The superintendent can invite guests, their principals, their teachers, their students, and we'll just have a conversation. They're about 35 to 40 minutes, and it tells a story. So Medina, their marching band, is such a huge success. What a great story to tell. Meanwhile, North Tonawanda was sending a science experiment up to a space station. What a great story to tell, right? And Mike Cornell, he led youth mental health first aid in his district. What a great story to tell. So I am driven by having people tell those stories, and then the listening. It's incredible. People are listening, not just in Western New York, literally all over the world. We have a high a number of people listening in Singapore for some reason, right? So it's incredible to see how it kind of catches on and people are paying attention to it. And then my work, I'm on the external advisory board for the University of Buffalo's AI Institute for Exceptional Ed. So I've had a chance to interview some of the principal researchers at UB. That's grown our listenership, but it's also amazing what's happening in our own backyard to support the social good of public education right here at UB. So I started that 3 years ago. It's joyful for me because I get to sit with great people and hear their stories and steal their ideas, right? I mean, that's exactly
you're giving my
happening.
secrets away here.
Yeah, it's totally true. And then I started one for my school district. It's called Inspiring Viking Values for the Grand Island Vikings, and it's driven by the principals. 5 schools, principals come up with a topic, and it's the same format, except it's focused, specifically on Grand Island. And this year we're doing a story from our 3 elementary schools and one of our middle schools, and we're just following the same 3 or 4 students throughout the year. So at our primary school, it's a K-1 school. We're following 2 first graders and 2 kindergartners, and they're coming to the table, Steve, and they're reading their favorite book, and they're reading their writing, and we're having fun games. We're doing brain teasers and, counting backwards and beginning addition. And again, when you talk about joy, right, and inspiration, our community, I think, will find and have found significant pride in what is happening in public education. And I think that that's one way to combat this negative narrative that we really don't know how to teach, and we're woke, and we're teaching race theory to kindergartners and all those things, right? And instead, I want to say, take a look at what's happening and how, this is what your tax dollars are helping to contribute. So I just did a podcast. It'll be out on Friday with a 6th and a 7th and an 8th grader. So articulate, beautiful, intelligent children talking about how excited they are about social studies, right? At 6th grade, just magical to interact with kids that love to learn and can articulate. I joke, when I was a parent, my child came home like, "What'd you learn at school today?" Right? "Oh, nothing." It's the exact opposite. And give children a chance to share their voice, and magical things can happen.
What a great example to be sharing for our listeners. I really, really thank you for that.
Yeah, this is great.
So before we sign off, Brian, what's the best way that people who are listening can find you, follow up with a question, or check out your podcast?
Yeah. So I do have a website. It's Brian S. Graham, so like graham cracker, briansgraham.com. And on that website, I'm starting to dabble a little bit in consulting. I'm doing a lot of keynote presentations and workshops on artificial intelligence. And so that's an exciting way, easy to get a hold of me. Of course, you can email me personally at brianshawngraham at Gmail, or my work is briangraham@gicsd.org. But happy to help others and, be there for others as they continue in their learning journey, helping kids.
We'll be sure to list those sites in the podcast lead-in so people can have it easy to find you.
Yeah, I love it.
Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you,
really
Steve.
appreciate
This is fantastic.